I guess I've just been on a bit of an animation kick here recently, but last week as I did the image reveal animation here on YouTube, I had somebody ask me about how Google is doing this animated background text thing they're doing on that same Gemini landing page. Now, digging into what Google did here, they actually did it pretty complicated and they've used an image to mask off the text. And I wanted to see if I could do something that would get us maybe 90 or 95% of this effect, but use about 10% of the code to get it done. And that's exactly what we're going to do in this video. Here, I'm going to show you how you can set up this animated background gradient text with just a few lines of CSS. It's a nice subtle way to animate something on your website without being over the top. If this sounds like something that's interesting to you, then stick around and let's get started. All right, so all I've done so far is just set up a section with an inner container. I've reduced the max width of that inner container slightly just to keep our text nice and condensed, and I've given it a dark background. So next we're just going to go ahead and add in an H1. I'm going to scroll down here and give it a text color of white so we can see it on the screen. And we'll say, welcome to the Gemini era. Of course, we want to go ahead and center align this, and I'm going to use one of my global styles here to change this to an XL headline, which just makes it a little bit bigger. Now, what we need to do to apply this effect just to a single word within this text is to add a span around this with a specific class. So to do that, I'm going to go ahead and click on this headline, click the three dots, and click Edit as HTML. Now here, I want to find the word Gemini, which is what I want to wrap in this span. And I just want to go ahead and add a span, then a space, add the word class, equals, and we'll open our parentheses. Here, we just need to name our class. I'm just going to call it Gemini, just so we can be consistent and know what we're talking about here. We'll close the parentheses and we'll close our bracket. Now here on the other side of the word Gemini, we're just going to do a / and span to end our span. Now, I would encourage you to be extra cautious as you're doing this. It is really easy to break blocks when you edit as HTML here. So just make sure that you've spelt everything correctly and that your syntax is done correctly. Now, once we're done with that, we can go ahead and hit edit visually. And as long as you didn't screw anything up, you should see your text just as it was before you hit the edit with HTML button. Now that's all we need to do here inside the editor. So I'm going to go ahead and hit update, and we'll open this on the front end where we can get into the customizer and start writing some CSS. So here we'll just go into the customizer and we'll go into additional CSS. Now let's go ahead and target our Gemini class. We're going to have to write some declarations here, and then we're actually going to have to do a keyframe animation. So the first thing I'm going to do is give this a background. Now I'm going to do a radial gradient, and I'm going to choose circle, and then I just need to pick a couple colors. Now I'm just going to use Dodger blue, yellow, which will give me a blue and yellow gradient. Obviously, you can use all your brand colors here and do this however you'd like. You'll just want to make sure you put them here inside the color for the radial gradient and separate each color by a comma. I'll go ahead and do our semicolon there. And we're going to have to eventually clip this to the text, but I'm going to wait till the end because I think it's easier to play with our gradient when we can see the whole box. And then once we're done and we got it just the way we want, we can actually clip this gradient to the text. So the next thing we need to do is write our animation. So I'm going to call this animation Gemini. You can call it whatever you'd like. We'll do 5 seconds to start out with so we can do our testing, but we will want to slow this down later. We'll do linear as the timing function, and we'll do infinite so this just repeats over and over again. Now, the last thing we want to do in here for now is actually make this background size twice the size that it is now. Essentially, we need this to fill up more space so that when we change positions of the background later, it'll look as if it's animating. So let's just go ahead and do a background size. We'll do 200%, 200%. You can see this has grown the size of our background here, and we'll be able to move this around with our animation. So speaking of that, let's go ahead and do an @ keyframes. And since we named this Gemini, we'll just call it Gemini here. Now we want to do 3 stops within this animation. So I'm going to do a 0%, we'll do a 50%, and we'll do a 100%. Now what we're going to want to do is a background position. For this first stop, we're going to do 0%, 0%, and I'll go ahead and copy this line so we can just reuse it. Go ahead and copy that, paste it here, and instead of 0, 0 at 50%, I want this to be 100, 100. and then we can paste it back into 0, 0 here at the end. Now with that in there, you can now see this animation's actually working. It's kind of moving this blue circle back and forth and up and down. Now it's pretty obvious that it's just moving a blue circle at this point because we can see the whole thing inside this box. But once we clip this to the text and slow down the animation, it'll be less obvious that that's exactly what's happening. Now all we got to do is go back and clip this background to our text, and then we can adjust the speed of the animation to make it look a little bit more subtle. So to do that, I'm going to do background clip, and we just type in the word text with our semicolon. That's now clipped this background to our text, but our text has a white fill color, so we can't actually see that background. To fix that, we'll just do color transparent, and now we can see that background is showing through our text and our animation is working right away. Now for me, this is a little bit too fast and it makes it really obvious that we're just kind of moving a blue ball back and forth. But if we slow this down to 15 seconds, it happens subtly enough that you can't tell exactly what's happening other than the color of the text is changing over time. And by slowing this down, this effect is a little less dramatic, and subtlety is always good when you're working with animations. Like I said at the beginning of this video, this isn't exactly what Google is doing on their landing page, but I think we're actually able to achieve about 90 or 95% of that effect without having to write nearly as much code as you would if you wanted to duplicate exactly what Google did. You know me, I'm always about trying to keep these things as simple as possible, and what we did here should have great browser support and shouldn't affect the performance of your website. If you learned something new today, I would really appreciate a thumbs up, and if you want to make sure to catch the next video, go ahead and hit subscribe, and we'll see you next week.